Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful land of enchantment, which is also known as New Mexico. And today's date is Saturday, October 8th, 2016. Yep, that's all I have to say. I know. It's insanity. Like a lot of flooding's happening in the northern parts of Florida through Matthew, St. Augustine, Daytona, Ormond Beach, up the Georgia coastline. So put them in your wishes and blessings. Plus, a lot of insanity is going on too in Kashmir. Trying to get, it looks like the Asian Indians are trying to, the folks over there want their freedom because a lot of tyranny going on in Nepal or Kashmir. So it's interesting, chaotic, and of course everyone's manifesting over the tapes or recordings of Donald Trump. It's all over the news. Donald Trump this, Donald Trump that, and it's a distraction. All right, because the whole thing is they're trying to get that other de facto puppet, Hillary Rodham Clinton, in there. It's called distraction, brainwashing, and all that. They're trying to let you forget what's going on through the WikiLeaks and so forth. With some emails being released, which it has been, which I'd like to thank Gary Franchi from Next News Network to put the word out. I did post it on my Facebook page, and I'm going to be talking about this as one of my main titles. So I'm going to start from here. This is from the LibertyWritersNews.com. It came out today by Paris Swade. It's called Hillary's Evil Plan to Destroy America, leaked last night. Read it before she deletes it. As I read here, we all know that Hillary wants to destroy America. We all suspected it. But now it's becoming increasingly obvious that she is going for the destruction of this country. What you're about to see is downright creepy. You can see the video yourselves. If elected president, Hillary Clinton will resettle 1 million Muslim migrants in her first term as president, according to the Department of Homeland Security. She will increase the inflow of refugees, but don't take my word for it. Take hers. There's a video on here. Okay, she did talk about it in Face the Nation, and she made some rhetoric at the Council of Foreign Relations about they're not violent or anything like that, but the whole thing is she wants to bring them all in. And so I'm going to continue here. In new WikiLeaks drop from her chief of staff, John Podesta, there are emails from the Hillary campaign discussing how badly the Muslim migrants have been for Germany and the rest of Europe. And there's a direct quote. And it actually came from WikiLeaks. And remember, everyone was like so disturbed and disappointed. Some people were disappointed when he didn't do it at the 10th anniversary, and people trying to criticize him and talk smack about him and all that, and people just really jumping the gun. Well, this one came out, and it's called Multi-Kolostans, a house of horrors for ordinary Germans. And that's the leak. It's from the link itself. So I'm gonna read. It's a good amount of it too. But I'll just give you some examples. And this came out actually the 21st of February of this year. It's from someone called Oracle100 at upcmail.nl. And of course, Podesta at lawgeorgetown.edu. And it says here about Britain is something of an odd man out in immigration devastated Europe, having also received large numbers of successful non-Western immigrants such as Hindus, Sheiks, and Chinese. By sharply contrast, the UK Muslims, blacks, Roma, and other problem immigrant groups do no better than those on the continent, as I will show you with statistics later at a later date. Muslim immigration and multicultural madness have left a trail of misery and mayhem across Germany, with far worse to come because of demographics. Muslims make only 9% of Berlin's population, yet account for 70% of young repeat criminals, revealed Berlin public prosecutor Roman Roche. There's a website on there, and you can see this for yourselves. To be more precise, 46% of Berlin's juvenile serial criminals are of Arab descent, while 33% of them Turkish ancestry. And have she put another link on here on these articles just to prove their point. In an un-German display of harsh truth-telling, Roche said in Der Spiegel that in parts of Berlin the population consists almost exclusively of problem cases, as he tells it. My immigrant children, as young as 6 or 7, all turn to crime and grow up to see honest, hardworking people as targets, walking sources of easy money. German society is completely powerless in the face of growing ruthless violence and crime. To describe the German police and criminal justice system as a big joke would be unfair to big jokes. You won't be surprised to hear that the outspoken public prosecutor has, meanwhile, been sacked from his job and banned from talking to the media. Look at that. They're trying to keep everything quiet. And I'll say here, the German police admits that large immigrant areas of Berlin, Hamburg, and Ruhr area, etc., have become police no-go areas where criminals and extremists have free reign. Within no time at all, a lone police patrol car making a foray into Germany's ethnic war zones finds itself surrounded by a Bayan lynch mob, much like Euro soldiers in Baghdad at the height of the troubles, added Roman Roche. And they did plenty of other like footages happened in a Berlin wedding district, which becomes too dangerous for single police officers to work in. So a lot of sites in here. And another one right here. It says website here: whites are fleeing West Berlin to escape immigrant violence, specifically targeting native Germans. So juvenile courts judge Christian Heisig in a ZDF report. There's plenty of sites on here, and a lot of disturbing stuff. White racism is the most virulent kind. It has become a fact of life across Europe, but perhaps nowhere to be more in Germany. Let's leave it at that. There's a lot of websites on here too, and it's very insane. Okay, and it talks about hate crimes, on the gays in Berlin, because a lot of them who are Islamic by faith, they condemn homosexuality. Just to let you folks know, it's not being, Islamophobe by any means, just giving you input. So, and it's this big list of links here. So it's totally insane, and I can just go right down here. As I said, it's here by Der Spiegel, reports that a stagger 50% of Berlin Turks live on the dole, but if you include stay-at-home Turkish women living indirectly off benefits, the unemployment figures rises to about 70%. Everything I've read about Berlin Arabs suggests to me that subsidized slothfulness among them is even worse. A humorous sign in America's Rocky Mountain National Park sums up what is wrong with the welfareized Europe. Please do not feed the squirrels. If you feed the squirrels, they'll become overweight and prone to disease. Their population will grow and they'll lose their ability for forage for food on their own. They will expect you to feed them and will attack you if you don't. They'll become a little welfare recipients, and you wouldn't want them to. You wouldn't want to do this to them. And here's another one right here. It says here below, a mind-bashing 63% of preschool immigrant children, often the fourth generation, in Berlin's Kreuzberg district speaks little or no German and theoretically indismissible to an elementary school, reveals Professor Pedadati Ali Yakar in Time magazine. That's what Muslim parents call giving your child a head start in life. The wider problem is that these kids bring along Zilic education and character building baggage courtesy of can't be bothered parents. The poverty of aspiration among welfareized Muslim immigrants is far greater impediment to progress than the poverty of wealth experienced by newcomers in the distant past. So I can just go on and on and on. And I'll give you one more here. Young Turkish criminals have a vocabulary of 500 German words, largely devoid of any grammar. As a matter of fact, Time writes that most third generation Turks speaks insufficient German, read Mickey Mouse German, is in parentheses, and that almost three-quarters of German Turks live in Turkish-speaking enclaves, while you'd be straining to follow any of the Turks in the featured clips, whose German is so dreadful as to be almost comical. And it's like I said, it's just totally insane. All right, and this is an example that Hillary Clinton is owned and branded by the One World Order. She is a Club of Rome advocate. In addition, her daughter and so-called husband are members of the Council of Foreign Relations. So to all you Clinton supporters out there that want to bow down to that disgusting, filthy pig, you should be in that line of fire as well, because you are part of the problem, part of the disease. And these are just an example, okay? I've been keeping track of this woman for 24 years, and I am not impressed at all. Even as a U.S. Senator, she is a freedom-hating scum queen. And I hear about the Bushes are supporting her. Remember, they're part of the same club, which the rank and file, maverick, ragtag folks like myself isn't allowed to get in. We're barred from it, for goodness sakes. But yeah, this is a lot of stuff here, and so this article does have merit. And you know what? I'm going to continue on. Head back here to the article out of fairness. I'm just giving you some examples, and on these WikiLeaks, like exactly. So if you can't read it, that says Muslim immigration and multicultural madness have left a trail of misery and mayhem across Germany. This email was written to Podesta. It shows a willingness to submit America to the same level of destruction that had been immediately appearing in Germany. These people are sick. Here's another huge quote that you should tell you everything. Multiculturalism, the human environment of a mad cow disease. It seems to run its course in much of Europe, but is still going strong in Germany. Tune into Germany television or visit German news websites, and it's like going back in time to much darker days. Most, but definitely not all, German media coverage of Turkish and other Muslim immigrants is just one big blur of multi-culti twaddle. In fact, the reporting is so delightfully deceitful that it becomes entertaining in a demented, freaky sort of way, in student denial of staring them in the face of immigration calamities. The vast majority of German journalists continue to preach the multicultural gospel with all religious fervor of snake oil televangelists threatening the growing numbers of apostates with fire and brimstone. Let me ask you this. If Hillary is willing to bring more of these refugees and knows about terror that they are bringing to Europe, why would she continue to do it? This woman wants to destroy America, plain and simple. And I can't argue about that, my friends. See, this vision she has, okay, she wants to destroy the women here that are living here now, wants to destroy the unions, destroy the men, women, and children that are westernized and supports freedom, Bill of Rights culture. She wants to eviscerate it. And all these folks are talking about Donald Trump talking crap. And I'm not defending the man, but the lamestream media is trying to shove it down their throats. And I have to give Julian Assange credit. He didn't hype it up. He just plugging away, just planting those seeds, dropping little bombs. Because I say just look into it, boom, it's meritable from WikiLeaks.org. And we're going to be talking about the Podesta emails too on here. So this one here, but that's the emails part one. Today, WikiLeaks begins a series on deals involving Hillary Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta. Mr. Podesta has a long-term associate of the Clintons and was President Bill Clinton's chief of staff from 1998 until 2001. Mr. Podesta controls the Podesta Group, a major lobbying firm, and is the chair for the for American Progress, CAP, a Washington-based think tank. Part one of the Podesta emails comprised 2,060 emails and 170 attachments and focused on Mr. Podesta's communications relating to nuclear energy and media handling over donations to the Clinton Foundation from mining and nuclear interests. 1,244 of the emails referenced under nuclear energy. The full collection includes emails to and from Hillary Clinton. In April 2015, New York Times published a story, which is a link for that, folks. You can check it out. I've read it. It's very interesting, I would say. A lot of dirty dealing. About a company called Uranium One, which was sold to Russian government-controlled interests, giving Russia effective control of one-fifth of uranium production capacity in the United States. Since uranium is considered a strategic asset with implications for the production of nuclear weapons, the deal had to be approved by a committee composed of representatives from a number of U.S. government agencies. Among the agencies that eventually signed off the deal was the State Department, that headed by who? Secretary Clinton. The Committee on Foreign Investments in the United States, which is CFIUS, comprises, among others, of the Secretaries of the Treasury, Defense, Homeland Security, and Commerce and Energy. Okay? I'll repeat that. Treasury, Defense, Homeland Security, and Energy. As Russian interests gradually took control of Uranium One, millions of dollars were donated to the Clinton Foundation between 2009 and 2013 from individuals directly connected to the deal, including the chairman of Uranium One, Ian Telfer. Although Mrs. Clinton had an agreement with the Obama White House to publicly identify all donors to the Clinton Foundation, the contributions from the chairman of Uranium One were not publicly disclosed by the Clintons. When the New York Times article was published by the Clinton campaign spokesman Brian Fallon strongly rejected the possibility that then Secretary Clinton exerted any influence in the U.S. government's review of the sale of Uranium One, describing this possibility as baseless. Mr. Fallon promptly sent a memo to the New York Times with a rebuttal of the story, which is Podesta's email 1489. And there's a link so you can read it, folks. In this memo, Mr. Fallon argued, apart from the fact that the State Department was just one of 9 agencies involved in CFIUS, it is also true that within the State Department, the CFIUS approval process historically does not trigger the personal involvement of the Secretary of State. The State Department's principal representation to CFIUS was the Assistant Secretary of State for Economic, Energy, and Business Affairs. During the time period in question, that position was held by Jose Fernandez. As you are aware, Mr. Fernandez has personally attested that Secretary Clinton never intervened with me on any CFIUS matter. What Clinton campaign spokesman failed to disclose, however, was the fact that a few days before sending his rebuttal to the New York Times, Jose Fernandez wrote on the evening of 17th of April 2015 to John Podesta following a phone call from Podesta. There's an email for that, which is 2030. As it says here, John, it was good to talk to you this afternoon, and I appreciate your taking the time to call. As I mentioned, I would like to do all I can to support Secretary Clinton and would welcome your advice and help steering me to the right persons in the campaign. And like I said, you can read this yourselves, my friends. It's all right there, and it's actually pretty accurate. And as this link here below the summary of issues, and it tells you all these great things on foreign policy. So immigration, I have worked and spoke on the issues since before the Obama administration. I have continued to do since coming back from DC. All right, you can read all this, Latino voting. So people are just, they're all being used. Here's one on Radio Miami for media. I appear every 2 weeks on the most conservative and Cuban of the radio stations, La Cubanísima, owned by Univision, to speak about Latin America, and most recently on the Cuban sanctions liberation. So like I said, this is a lot of interesting leaks here. So let's use people, man. Let's swindle. Let's see how many folks we can screw over. And Jose Fernandez is with Gibson Dunn, which is Gibson Dunn and Crutcher, which is based out of where? New York City. Oh yeah, man. So a lot of stuff is happening here, the foreign policy and so forth. So it's like, so it's all like, hey, I'll watch your back, you watch mine. One hand washes the other in the name, even if it's tyrannical, correct? And it goes right here. The email shows that the contacts between John Podesta and Jose Hernandez go back to the time of internal Clinton campaign, concerned about then the forthcoming book and movie, Clinton's Cash, by Peter Schweizer, on the financial dealings of the Clinton Foundation. In an email dated 29th of March 2015, Jose Fernandez writes to Podesta, "Hi John, I trust you. If you're getting a brief rest after a job well done, thanks no doubt to your recommendation, I have joined CAP, Center for American Progress, Board of Trustees, which I am finding extremely rewarding." How sweet is that, my friends? And the email's right there too. So john.podesta@gmail.com to jfernandez at gibsoundundone.com. I think it's great. And it's interesting too with the encrypted se.arin.sepp@gmail.com. So it's all in here, my friends. And of course, he was in China when all this happened. All right, he was in China. You'll know later on in the week. So it's all like prima facie just cause. That's why I'm just like getting a big kick out of this. But hey, Julian Assange and WikiLeaks is doing their job. Don't follow the hype. When that time comes, many people will get it. Get them on Twitter, follow them, get RSS follow feed. Then you can get it. No excuses. But this is just the whole debacle of the whole Clinton campaign, her dirty laundry, and the sales of uranium to Uranium One, or so like to Uranium One. It's just my, oh my, oh my. How does the feces pile up and gets more potent by the day? And this is why I tell you this. If she wants to destroy America, she wants to destroy the unions and all the freedom lovers, sovereign thinkers out there. She don't give a damn about any one of us. The corruption of Hillary Clinton is so acidine, I wouldn't even light a match in it. Match. Because it may explode. And I say that symbolically. This is why, my friends, you gotta look at everything across the board. That's all I'm going to say about this. And I know there's going to be more stuff coming out. This one came out from boilingfrogspot.com. It's entitled Washington's Systematic Perpetual Propaganda War. This is by James Petressa. So, Petrus, excuse me. And it says here, propaganda techniques of empire, the most common and recent techniques used to support ongoing imperial wars. Washington's quest for perpetual world power is underwritten by systematic and perpetual propaganda wars. Every major and minor war has been preceded, accompanied, and followed by unremitting government propaganda designed to secure public approval, exploit victims, slander critics, dehumanize targeted adversaries, and justify its allies' collaboration. In this paper, we will discuss the most common recent techniques used to support ongoing imperial wars. Role reversal. A common technique practiced by the imperial publicists is to accuse the victims of the same crimes which have been committed against them. The well-documented, deliberate, and sustained U.S.-EU aerial bombardment of Syrian government soldiers engaged in operations against ISIS terrorists resulted in the deaths and maiming of almost 200 Syrian troops and allowed ISIS mercenaries to overrun their camp in an attempt to deflect the Pentagon's role in providing air cover for the very terrorists it claims to oppose. The propaganda organs cranked out lurid but unsustainable stories of an aerial attack on a UN humanitarian aid convoy, first blamed on the Syrian government and then on the Russians. The evidence that the attack was most likely a ground-based rocket attack by ISIS terrorists did not deter the propaganda mills. The technique would turn U.S. and European attention away from documented criminal attack by the imperial bombers and present the victimized Syrian troops and pilots as international human rights criminals. Yeah, of course. Can't argue with that. It's like a double speak, with their this brain trying to brainwash the masses here. Hysterical rants faced with the word opprobrium is a wanton violation of an international ceasefire agreement in Syria. The imperial public spokespeople frequently resort to irrational outbursts at international meetings in order to intimidate, waver allies into silence, and shut down any chance for reasonable debate resolving concrete issues among adversaries. The current U.S. Ranter-in-Chief in the United Nations is Ambassador Samantha Powers, who launched a vitriolic diatribe against the Russians in order to sabotage a proposed General Assembly debate on the U.S. deliberate violation its criminal attack on Syrian troops at the recent Syrian ceasefire. Instead of a reasonable debate among serious diplomats, the rant served to derail the proceeding. Identity politics to neutralize any imperialist movements. The empire is commonly defined with the race, gender, religion, and ethnicity of its practitioners. Imperial propagandists have frequently resorted to disarming and weakening anti-imperialist movements by co-opting and corrupting black, ethnic, minority, and women leaders and spokespeople. The use of such symbolic tokens is based on the assumption that these are representatives reflecting the true interests of so-called marginalized minorities and can therefore presume to speak for the oppressed peoples of the world. Promotion of such complaint and respectable minority members to the elite is then propagandized as a revolutionary world liberating historical events. Witness the election of U.S. President Barack Obama. The rise of Obama to the presidency in 2008 illustrates how the imperial propagandists have used identity politics to undermine class and anti-imperialist struggles. Under Obama's historical black presidency, the U.S. pursued 7 wars against people of color in South Asia, the Middle East, and North Africa. Over a million men and women of sub-Saharan black origin, whether the Libyan citizens of contract workers for neighboring countries, were killed and depossessed and driven into exile by U.S. allies after the U.S. EU destroyed the Libyan state in the name of humanitarian intervention. Hallelujah. Hundreds of thousands of Arabs have been bombed in Yemen, Syria, and Iraq under President Obama, the so-called historic black president. Oh yeah, the bend over Bob to the New World Order. That's what I say about President Barack Obama. Obama Predator drones have killed hundreds of Afghan and Pakistani villagers. Such is the power of identity politics. The ignominious Obama was rewarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Meanwhile, in the United States, under Obama, ra- racial inequalities between black and white workers, wages, unemployment, access to housing, health, and educational services have widened. Police violence against blacks intensify with total impunity for killer cops. Over 2 million immigrant Latino workers have been expelled, breaking up hundreds of thousands of families, and accompanied by a marked increase of repression compared to earlier administrations. Millions of black and white workers' home mortgages were foreclosed, while all the corrupt banks were bailed out at a greater rate that occurred under white presidents. This blatant, cynical manipulation of identity politics facilitated the continuation and deepening of imperial wars, class exploitation, and racial exclusion to bog representation, undermine class struggles for genuine changes. You, hopefully, you folks are actually paying attention to this. So that's why you see all this propaganda and reports about racial division and trying to blame the white person. It's the same old song and dance. It's been going on for millenniums. Even in 20th century, great example of genocide and democide by corrupt governments trying to blame on a specific group. Doesn't matter of their faith, how they look, or what they believe in. They want to point the finger. It's called scapegoating. Okay, I'll continue on here. Past suffering to justify contemporary exploitation. Imperial propagandists repeatedly evoke the victims and abuses of the past order to justify their own aggressive imperial interventions and support for the land grabs and ethnic cleansing committed by their colonial allies like Israel, among others. The victims and crimes of the past are presented as a perpetual presence to justify ongoing brutalities against contemporary subject people. The case of U.S.-Israeli colonization of Palestine clearly illustrates how rapid criminality, pillage, ethnic cleansing, and self-enrichment can be justified and glorified through the language of past victimizations. Propagandists in the U.S. and Israel have created the cult of the Holocaust, worshiping a near-century-old Nazi crime against Jews, as well as captive Slavs, Gypsies, and other minorities. And here's the thing. According to Death by Government by R.J. Rummel and J.P. Photo video called Innocence Betrayed, but or Death by Gun Control, 10.5 million were Slavs. Okay, were Slavs. So that's more than the Jews who were slaughtered. I'm not saying what's worse than the others. All completely condemning. Don't get me wrong. But if you go to these places like the Holocaust museums, 6 million Jews died. So usually, because according to the book, again, I just aforementioned, Death by Government by R.J. Rummel, it was roughly like 20 and a half million, I would say. Okay? So usually the question I have for those folks, does the 14 million others don't count? Some of them get real offended, but you know what? I don't care. Because I see it across the board. And I will continue on here. Gypsies and other minorities in Europe to justify bloody conquest and theft of Arab lands and sovereignty and engage systematic military assaults against Lebanon and Syria. Millions of Muslim and Christian Palestinians have been driven into perpetual exile. Elite, wealthy, well-organized, and influential Zionist Jews with primary fealty to Israel have successfully sabotaged every contemporary struggle for peace in the Middle East and have created real barriers for social democracy in the U.S. through their promotion of militarism and empire building. Those claiming to represent victims of the past have become the most oppressive commentary elites. Using the language of defense, they promote aggressive forms of expansion and pillage. They claim their monopoly on historic suffering has given them special dispensation from the rules of civilized conduct. Their cult of Holocaust allows them to inflict immense pain on others while silencing any criticism with the accusations of anti-Semitism and relentlessly pushing critics. Their key role in imperial propaganda warfare is based on their claims of an exclusive franchise on suffering and immunity from the norms of justice. See, it's just they want to make them as exceptional, special, diplomatic immunity, etc. I will proceed. Entertainment spectacles on military platforms. Entertainment spectacles glorify militarism. Imperial propagandists link to the public to unpopular wars promoted by otherwise discredited leaders. Sports events present soldiers dressed up as war heroes was deafening, emotional display of flag worship to celebrate the ongoing overseas wars of aggression. These mind-numbing extravaganzas with crude elements of religiousity demand choreographed expressions of national allegiance from the spectators as a cover for continued war crimes abroad and the destruction of citizens' economic rights at home. I will stop there for the moment. If you watch the football games on September 11, 2001, or during that week, everyone has the American flag and go, I am a slave, but I feel free. They still want to push that. They attacked us on that day because of our freedoms. Just another monumental lie. I have to use that as an example. Much admired multi-millionaire musicians and entertainers of all races and orientations present war to the masses with a humanitarian facade. The entertainer's smiling faces serve genocide just as powerful as the president's banging and friendly face accompanies his embrace of militarism. The propagandist message for the spectator is that your favorite team or singer is there just for you because our noble wars and valiant warriors have made you free, and now they want you to be entertained. In other words, it's a distraction. The old style of blatant bellicose appeals to the public is obsolete. The new propaganda conflates entertainment with militarism, allowing the ruling elite to secure tacit support for its wars without disturbing the spectator's experience. The conclusion: due the imperial techniques of propaganda work, how effective are the modern imperial propaganda techniques? The results seem to be mixed. In recent months, elite black athletes have begun protesting white racism by challenging the requirement for choreographed displays of flag worship, opening public controversy into larger issues of police brutality and sustained marginalization. Identity politics, which led to the election of Obama, may be giving away to issues of class struggle, racial justice, anti-militarism, and the impact of continued imperial wars. Historical rants may still secure international attention, but repeated performances begin to lose their impact and subject the ranter to ridicule. The cult of victimology has become less rational for the multi-billion-dollar U.S. tribute to Israel than an overwhelming political and economic influence and thuggery of billionaire Zionist fundraisers who demand U.S. politicians to support for the state of Israel. I'll say this before. John Jay is rolling in his grave. Read Federalist Papers 2 through 5. And in addition, when people talk about wealth distribution, we shouldn't have it. And the same folks want us to donate money to Israel is doublespeak. Or any other nation that supports tyranny, our dollars, American dollars, should never go to them, period. This is why I oppose foreign aid of any kind. Brandishing identified politics may have worked the first few times, but invariably black, Latino, immigrant, and all exploited workers, all underpaid and overlooked women and mothers reject the empty symbolic gestures and demands substantive socio-economic changes. And here they find common links with the majority of exploited white workers. In other words, the existing propaganda techniques are losing their edge. The corporate media news is seen as a sham, who follows the actors, soldiers, and flag worshippers once the game has begun. The propagandists of empire are desperate for a new line to grab public attention and obedience. Could the recent domestic terror bombings in New York and New Jersey provoke mass hysteria and more militarization? They could they serve as a cover for more wars abroad? A recent survey published in Military Times reported that the vast majority of active U.S. soldiers oppose more imperial wars. They are calling for defense at home and social justice. Soldiers, soldiers and veterans have even formed groups to support the protesting black athletes who refuse to participate in flag worshiping while unarmed black men are being killed by police in the streets. Despite the multi-million-dollar electoral propaganda, over 60% of the electorate reject both major party candidates. The reality principle has finally started to undermine state propaganda. I have to agree with Professor James Petrus on this. This is why I've been telling people that the year 2016 is the transformation year, according to Chinese astrologers. There's a big spiritual warfare happening. And this is why I don't really make a big stink about Colin Kaepernick kneeling down for the national anthem. And some people try to go after him, but they support these ass wipes. It's okay to go attack other nations, but that's okay. They want to hurt. They want to get angry on petty stuff, but they don't want to go focus on the bigger picture. But I'm glad I'm seeing this happening. Okay, especially in the NFL, because like I said, I'm very critical with some of these big corporations in the sport and the entertainment industry. And I know the athletes, they put their lives on the line. It's just an example. They made a decision. They know they're getting banged up. Some of them are getting injured. And I've seen the movie Concussion. I recommend everyone check it out. I remember the time when Jack Ham was a center for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he was one hell of one tough dude. That's all I have to say, man. So be forever free. And many others that passed because of distorted in the brain and concussions and so forth. I know I'm ranting, but I apologize. But one thing I see is a big spiritual awakening. And Professor James Petrus is the same thing. And this is why I tell people, I always push this out there. Right? Thomas Jefferson, a little rebellion now and then is good. Yeah, he may own some slaves, but you know what? A lot of his philosophy is effective. And I like it. Not being anti-patriotic is anti-imperialism. And that's what I say when the men and soldiers are seeing this. It's called war fatigue. People are sick and tired of it. The war on terror is a monumental lie. It's a war against the people, including the ones in the United States, a la Patriot Act, being going through the X-ray machines, being pat down like little prisoners at the airports. And they want to expand that. They're going to tell them to stick it. The sheriffs need to tell them to stick it. The state's got to tell them where to go. That's what they're worried about. So you can think what you want, but always see things in a bigger picture. And I'm not finished here. Whoopee, I don't have all the answers. The war on consciousness is still progressing, and right now they're losing its grip thanks to the alternative media, internet, etc. And that's all I'm going to say about this. Speaking of the internet, I've got to add this on here, which I did. This is by SHTF, crapistafanplan.com. And this was written by Jeremiah Johnson, who is a retired Green Beret, by the way. It says here, we will soon find out what true censorship means. Obama's surrender of internet control to authoritarian regimes is irreversible. And I know Ben Swan and a few others did talk about this. It says here, Saturday, October 1st, 2016 was that day that Obama, using the Commerce Department, ceded American control over the internet to foreign nations and the UN. Naysayers can attempt to whitewash this maneuver and claim that the ICANN, which is an internet corporation for assigned names and numbers, is simply a non-profit corporation that contracted to manage the internet when old obligations expire. That is completely false. Once again, Obama has utilized a unilateral action on an issue that should be left up to Congress if, for just one reason alone, the complete compromise of national security by transferring control to the internet to foreign nations. Uncle Tom Obama does it again. Senator Ted Cruz and other congressmen wrote a long, detailed letter to try to halt the transfer. In their words, fell on deaf ears. The transfer is so heinous and so dangerous to the United States that four states in the Arizona, Nevada, Oklahoma, and Texas filed a lawsuit with the U.S. District Court in Galveston, Texas, to try to prevent it a few days before the transfer took place. A federal judge ruled that the transfer could proceed. Why wasn't this action stopped or delayed? Because George C. Hanks Jr. is a Texas federal judge who ruled on Friday there that there would be no delay regarding the transfer of U.S.-controlled internet to ICANN. Here's why. Judge Jorge C. Hanks Jr. was appointed by President Barack Hussein Obama II. Birds of a feather flock together. Why is the transfer heinous and dangerous? For starters, prior to the ruling by the Obama-appointed judge, an actual transfer, a letter was written to both Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joseph Dunford, and Secretary of Defense Ash Carter 2 days before the ruling. The letter was composed by 77 experts in the field of the internet, cybersecurity, and national security, and pleaded for intervention to prevent the transfer. Justification for stopping the move was explained as follows in excerpts from the letter. As it reads, as individuals with extensive first-hand experience with protecting our national security, we write to urge you to intervene in opposition to an imminent action that would, in our judgment, could profound and irreversible damage to the United States' vital interests. Indeed, there is, to our knowledge, no compelling reason for exposing the national security to such a risk by transferring our remaining control of the internet in this way at this time. In absence of the United States government involved in IANA, with IANA, it seems possible that over time, foreign powers, including potentially and actually hostile ones, will be able to influence the IANA process, even coercing for delays in approving IP addresses could impact military capabilities from a broader view, given the well-documented ambition of these actors to restrict freedom of expression and or entrepreneurial activity on the internet. Such a transfer authority of ICANN could have far-reaching and undesirable consequences for untold numbers of people worldwide. It is profoundly disappointing that the Obama administration has decided to press on with this plan to relinquish the United States oversight of crucial internet functions, even though Congress has not given its approval. For years, there is a bipartisan understanding that the ICANN transition is premature and that critical questions remain unanswered about the influence of authoritarian regimes in internet governance, the protection of free speech, the effect on national security, and impacts on consumers, just to name a few. To clarify parts of this letter, IANI stands for Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, had made the contract, and the contract made with ICANN was between them and the NTIA, the National Communications and Information Administration, the bureaucratic institution to previously regulate the internet and assign things such as domain names and identifications, as is overseen by the federal government through the Commerce Department and almost 2 decades old policy of American internet control. Obviously, the letter did not work. ICANN, as mentioned before, is not a simple nonprofit corporation based in Los Angeles. ICANN has an office in Beijing, China, in the same building where over 30,000 Chinese employees work in the state cybersecurity apparatus. In addition to the Chinese, other multinational partners and owners in ICANN include Russia, Iran, Cuba, North Korea, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela, all which not exactly famous for upholding rights of free speech to their citizens, as we used to have in the U.S. under the First Amendment. But here's the gimmick. Obama's judge denied the transfer stoppage in U.S. court ruling, and the contract with the multinational firm with international partners is currently in effect being exercised. Now, any legal action would have to come before an international court, such as a Hague in the Netherlands, to challenge the rights of foreign partners in this internet takeover. Returning to the actual issues involved with the loss of U.S. oversight to the internet, an expert cybersecurity, Bruce Schneier, CTO of IBM's Resilient and a fellow Harvard's Berkman Center, said on September 25, 2016, that Chinese cyberware attacks have been on the rise for the past month. He also mentioned that because of the intricacies and complexities of the attacks, they are being performed by a late-state cyber warfare unit. Internet infrastructure companies have been experiencing cyber attacks and have been intricate, escalating, and testing components of the company's sensitive structures. Schneier mentioned the end goal for these suspected Chinese hackers, a global blackout on all websites and email addresses in the most common top-level domains. This is a pretty deep statement, especially in the light of the fact that now the Chinese don't have to waste their efforts and energies with hacking since the internet's in their hands. The Center for Security Policy president and founder Frank Gaffney on September 28th gave an interview to Breitbart News Daily and stated the following crucial conversations. What they are preparing to do is to cede, surrender the last vestige of American control or even influence over what is done with critical functions of the internet. The point is, if you think that the freedom of the internet, whatever, is the ability of people to communicate freely information on it, or whether you think of it as an engine for free enterprise, let alone if you understand the contribution that makes these days to national security, including, by the way, operations of our crucial infrastructure, you will understand that the United States retaining a measure of quality control as to what's going on with how the internet is populated with names, numbers, domains, and websites, and the like is a very important thing. Countries, I should say, like Russia and China and Saudi Arabia and Iran and North Korea don't want us to have any say in this, would like to be able to change things around so they can not only restrict all the things the internet does help their own people, but they want to take those freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of enterprise away from us as well. It will be irreversible once this so-called mechanism known as numbering and naming functions permanently and irreversibly to some multinational nonprofit, which will, trust me, be dominated in due course. If not right away, by the Russians, Chinese, and the Saudis, and so on. We're not getting that back. There's not anything that President Trump is going to be able to do about it. If he does, in fact become president. Gaffney served as a former Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and is more than well versed in the actions of the partners who have just been gifted with control of the internet by Obama. And yes, your eyes did read correctly. North Korea and Iran are also partners in this tragic giveaway. Early articles pertaining to EMP, electromagnetic pulse, weapons, and nuclear tests by North Korea 2 days before their 9916 nuclear test that was an estimated between 20 to 30 kilotons. The company who's monitored them by satellite for such action was hacked into and shut down. The hackers could have been North Korean, Chinese, or Russian. With GridX 2014, the Russians and Chinese know about our systems to protect the electrical grid in the U.S. and all the computer systems it relies on. Now these countries have control over the internet. There have been many recent postings on all independent news websites about denying access to major sites, increased difficulties with emails and servers, increased time to access a conservative news venue, and other difficulties within the past 2 weeks. I have experienced similar occurrences, for example, when attempting to view Alex Jones's site, and even where here with SHTF plan, where the screen announces Yahoo cannot link to this website or website temporarily unavailable or such. But there's never a problem logging onto the Huffington Post and no delay reaching the Washington Post or any other left-wing site. Additional concerns will be surfacing with the new SDR, which is special drawing rights measures being accepted into U.S. banking system via partners such as the IMF and the effects on the U.S. money supply as the cash is being slowly eliminated toward all accounts being solely in electronic fraud funds. How does this play out with China, Russia, and other controlling websites and the internet where funds are moved, stored, and accounted for? What will be the effects on inventory and purchases over the internet? What about online banking and checks that are issued electronically to pay bills as well for goods and services? And what about our defenses and our infrastructure? What will happen with potential response times for missile attacks when DoD servers and computer systems are hacked and shut down? What about the previously mentioned power grid? Some commenters have suggested that an EMP would even be needed if they just shut down all the power to critical infrastructure, and I agree with this in part. They still initiate an attack with an EMP to destroy microcircuits and electronic equipment, not depend on not depend or interacting with the internet. What better measures to take military aircraft fall from the skies and zap unshielded sources, not computer-driven or dependent, hand in hand with an EMP, however, would be crippling cyber attack. These next few weeks will be revelatory, to at least as we find out what measures may be taken by these foreign nations to name and number all users, killing anonymity. We will soon find out what true censorship means, as all this will have a drastic effect on the independent news media sites. Obama succeeded. He won yet again by transferring control on the internet to ICANN. He has won or evaded every battle that has been fought with him, and now he won the battle to deny the U.S. of the only venue of news and communications that was completely skewed, controlled, or rubbish. October 1st, 2016 is potentially another day that we will live in infamy. The loss of individual freedoms with the internet guaranteed under the First Amendment has now been given away to ICANN and its consortium of foreign partners by Obama. Yep, so there you have it. Your Lord and Savior, the people still think President Obama is a great man. You've been duped once again. Speaking of the EMP, about airplanes and so forth going down and people losing power, I've been checking out this show on show called Revolution. I think it was on for like a couple seasons and it went off because it was a little bit more realistic. If you got Netflix, check it out. Or not, go to the library. They should have it out there. I've been watching. It's been pretty interesting. It's talks about the EMP stuff. So that's another thing of cyber warfare. And that's why, my friends, I never liked that son of a bitch, President Obama, and I hate to use that language. A lot of folks thought it was crazy. They don't like because he was black. It doesn't matter. Just another treasonous stooge, a tyrannical butt boy, a global puppet. And I remember people were real critical when Jimmy Carter gave Panama ownership. Gave away the Panama Canal to Panama. How come they're not talking about this? Completely unacceptable. All you Obama supporters out there, you should burn those posters. And burn your posters, burn your idol, because he's nothing more than a filthy piece of garbage. That's how I feel about him. I treat him like George W. Bush. Okay, so don't say I'm partisan biased, because you won't win. I'll be back in a moment, so stay tuned. Okay, well, the next article I'm going to be narrating came from humansarefree.com, and this was written by Isabel Z. It's entitled, Pepsi admits its soda contains cancer-causing ingredients. And as it reads here, when the Center for Environmental Health released test results that showing Pepsi intentionally covered up the presence of high levels of Formel in its popular soft drink in 2013. The company denied both the presence of this chemical in its beverages and the fact that it was dangerous. Formel, which is short for 4-methylamidazole, is a compound that is formed in manufacture of caramel coloring, also and is known as carcinogen. Since then, the drink's maker has fought against complying with California state requirements to place the cancer warning label on the beverages that contain the ingredient which include not only Pepsi but also Diet Pepsi and Pepsi One. Now, a settlement class action lawsuit against Pepsi gained preliminary approval from a federal judge in California. As part of the proposed settlement, Pepsi has agreed to ensure its caramel coloring Formel levels do not exceed 100 parts per billion in products that are being shipped for sale within the U.S. They will also be required to test the soda using specific protocols. So it's going to be more minimal, more like, what the hell? The soft drink giant also agreed to these measures in a different lawsuit that was settled in a California state court last year. New settlement, however, expands the reach of these measures from California to the entire country. Pepsi failed to warn consumers that its drinks contain known carcinogen, oh, car- carcinogens. The lawsuit accused Pepsi of failing to warn people that beverages contain Formel, which California has officially recognized a cancer-causing chemical. A 2014 Consumer Reports test shows that the Formel in Pepsi exceeding the permitted levels of 29 micrograms per bottle or can, which would mean that they are in violation of common law and consumer protection statutes in the state of California. In particular, that this violates California's Proposition 65, which has been placed since 1985 and requires manufacturers to provide consumers with clear warnings when their products will expose them to toxic or cancer-causing chemicals. The state's Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment set the cutoff at 29 micrograms because that levels it creates a risk of cancer of 1 in 100,000. A site citing a 2013 Mentel and Leatherhead Food Research report, Consumer Reports that said that caramel coloring is the world's most widely used food coloring. At this time, Pepsi tried to say that because Prop 65 refers to exposure per day than exposure per can, and that the average amount of diet soda that its drinkers consume daily is less than a can, there was no need to place a warning on it. Consumer Reports disagreed, however. No matter how much consumer drinks, they don't expect their beverage to have potential car- carcinogen in them. And we don't think Formel should be in foods at all. Our tests of Coke samples show that it is possible to get much lower levels, toxicologist Dr. Ruvashi Rangan said. Is drinking soda really worth risking cancer and obesity? It simply does not make sense for people to expose themselves unnecessarily to an ingredient that merely serves to color their food, and consumers have the right to be aware of what they are putting in their bodies. The popularity of books like Food Forensics serves to illustrate the growing desire by Americans who know what ingredients in their food product contains. Cancer-causing caramel coloring in Pepsi is not the only reason consumers should steer clear of it. Soft drinks are also believed to be behind the nation's obesity epidemic. A UCLA study found that adults who consume one sugary drink, such as soda, every day had a 25% higher likelihood of being classified as overweight than those who do not drink such beverages. Moreover, drinking just one soda each day adds up a total of 39 pounds of sugar each year. That means that regular soda drinkers can cut their risk of obesity and cancer in one fell swoop simply by giving up the habit for good. Absolutely. And this is why when it comes to soft drinks, I'm very minimal. And actually, if I buy like soft drinks and like microbrewery sodas, that's the ones I buy. I don't go to the big corporate ones, though I've been very good. I may have it once in a while, but I've been very persistent overall. And everyone needs to do the same thing. But something like this, 4 ml, that's pretty insane. So this is what these bastards, okay, these corporate bastards want to shove down your throats. I know people in the restaurant industry, the bar industry, and so forth, they need to be aware of this as well. And I have posted on my Facebook page, so definitely add all these footnotes to my Spreaker page as well for the show. So please spread this word as possible. And water will be the right remedy, or buy something like microbrewery related stuff because there's like at the health food store, it's a lot better than what the crap these big corporate soft drink industry, food industry. Try to, I did a brain space there. Sorry about that. Buy buy stuff than what buy stuff more microbrewery than the corporate empires. Okay, so that's how I look at it. And finally, came from the 10th Amendment Center.com, came out today. It's called Constraining the White House Staff by Michael Rappaport. We live in a world where an increasing number of things that are supposed to be done by Congress are done by the executive. Treaties are supposed to be approved by the president with the ratification of two-thirds of the Senate, but the president makes many agreements of his authority based on a variety of claims. Legislation is supposed to be passed by Congress, but agencies do most legislation through rulemaking. And wrongdoing by executive officials is generally reviewed by executive officials rather than by congressional impeachment. It happens all the time, right? Some of these actions may be constitutional under the original meeting, but some are not. Another way that the executive takes action that is supposed to be shared with Congress is through appointments. The Constitution provides that appointments are to be made by the President with the advice and consent of the Senate. But the President often makes appointments on his own. Sometimes this was done through a broad understanding of the recess appointments clause, which is a majority to the Supreme Court accepted. But see here for what I regard as the better view. Let's check this out. Let's see what they have to say here. It has it all right here. It's October 6, 2004. So interesting stuff. So definitely folks, look that up. The link's in it's called Social Science Research Network. So definitely check that out. At other times, the president makes unilateral appointments of the White House staff on the ground that these staff members, however important their position seems to be, does not constitute officers of the United States under the Appointments Clause. The reason is that these staff members are said merely to give advice, to engage in non-binding conversations with officials, or to convey messages from the president to officials. Actions that would not involve the exercise of substantial authority and therefore would not implicate the appointment clause under Supreme Court case Buckley versus Valeo. The public policy problem is that the number of these White House staff members is growing, and therefore the power of the federal government is increasingly exercised by people who have not secured the consent of the Senate. Again, some of these actions concerning appointments may be constitutional under the original meaning, and some may be unconstitutional. What can be done about this? The simplest way to address it would be passed to limit appropriations to pay members of the White House staff. This would be clearly constitutional and would limit the staff, but the president will likely to resist such legislation with a veto. Another possible law that might be employed would be to limit the actions of the staff. While the White House staff can communicate messages from the president to lower officials without being subject to the appointment clause, the White House staff cannot give orders to these officials without being subject to the appointments clause. Thus, Congress might prohibit any staff member from giving orders to such officials and a violation of the prohibition to a civil or criminal sanction. Perhaps Congress could go further. They may believe the White House staff sometimes uses uncertainty about whether the president has an issue as an order as a means of exercising controls over officials. Therefore, they might require that the staff member might make explicit in each conversation whether the advice order is from the president and make it a civil or criminal violation to fail to do so or to misrepresent the nature of the communication. While the president might resist this law, it will probably be constitutional and will replace limits on the power of the White House staff. Professor Rappaport is right. Like I said, his Article 2 of the Constitution talks about his powers, and that's it. But giving advice and doing executive orders because some staff members say so, null and void. So you got to look at everything across the board. That's why it's called protocol, checks and balances. And that's how I see things, and hopefully you folks do as well. So start petitioning to your servants to make this possible. That's how he looks at it, and I will back him up on it. All right, folks, I'd like to thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share this episode throughout your social media networks and anything else that's on the archives of my Spreaker page. If you have any questions, comments, or send me something that's interesting I haven't addressed yet, whatever you do, please send your correspondences with decorum. You can be on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, or Scene.life. In addition, you can email me at LokiLuck3, which is LokiLuck and number 3 together at gmail.com. Well, I said, what the heck? I decided to play a song, and it's from a great New York hardcore band, one of the true pioneers in that scene, a band called Sick of It All. It's entitled We Stand Alone. I've seen them like so many times. It's been a while, but when they come back to town, check them out. You won't be disappointed. They're still doing it because it's in their blood. And that's what I gotta say. Great band, true to New York hardcore. And if you haven't heard them, check them out. Once again, you won't be disappointed. All right, my friends, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.